Madman Group on the state of the patriarchy. Where are we? Where are we going? And what's stopping us? I'd like to start off with introductions from the panel. Sir, can you introduce yourself?
I'm Pat Stedman. I'm a dating and relationship coach for men, and I am a father of one with number 2 on the way in a month.
Elliot?
I'm Elliot Hulse, strongman strength coach, father of 4, and patriarch to millions of men worldwide.
My name is Jeff Younger. I'm the father of 2 boys. I'm a fierce defender of those 2 boys, and I speak up for men and boys at the political level.
My name is Michael Foster. I'm a pastor. I'm a husband to Emily, father to 7 kids, and I'm here for a good time.
And my name is Brian Sauvé. I am also a pastor. My wife's name is Lexi, and we've been married for 11 years now. We have 6 children, one of them still cooking, 3 boys, 2 girls, and we are doing our best to rebuild Christendom in Ogden, Utah.
I would like to start with you. How did having children change your views on masculinity and your worldview generally?
So having children, I think more than anything, deepened what I believed. And it took a lot of things that were theoretical, and it brought them to the level of practitioner, which is always an absolute test of your theories.
Right.
So some of them didn't pass the muster, and then some of them did. And I think the biggest thing, though, that I found through becoming a father, especially at a young age, my wife and I were married. She was 19, I was 20, and we began having children within 2 years. We had children, so. What it did more than anything was humble me and teach me that I wasn't, having a head full of ideas is easy, but living those ideas out practically is not easy. And so I think fatherhood is a crucible in that way. And it was very helpful.
How about you, Michael?
So it should be become a man, become a husband, become a father. But a lot of times what happens is because of our natural desire to be with a woman, we become a husband. And as a consequence of that, we become a father. And it's the moment when you become a father, especially of a boy, where it really hits you. I don't know how to be a man because masculinity is more caught than is taught. It's like 80% caught.
Right.
And so when you are when you realize you're in a relay race and you got this person that's going to race in front of you, you don't have the baton. That hits you hard.
Sure.
And so for me, it was certainly a moment that I saw deficiencies in my character and my masculinity thoughts. It drove me to, I read a ton of books like guys do. They think information is going to solve everything. I swear every question's like, you have books to recommend? What, another book for you not to do anything with? But I did read a lot of those books, and then it slowly, it helped me realize how important fatherhood is. And it's really what put me on the birth of my son, Hudson, is what drove me to get into this space, I think, more and more.
You know, I really enjoyed the pictures you showed during your presentation at the Patriarch Convention, and the love for your son really showed.
Yeah.
It was touching. How about you, Elliot?
Well, I have to start by saying that I was raised by a strong father in an intact home, and that in and of itself set a precedence for what fatherhood would be for me, though I was raised in the same gynocentric blue pill culture that most of us were raised in. My father avoided that. He grew up in the jungle of Belize. And so unlike a lot of my fat and funny friends' fathers, my dad was lean and mean. I resented him as a result because I thought he should be more like the dads on TV screens. And so I tried it out the contemporary pop culture way. When I discovered that it didn't work after trying to raise my 3 daughters, I remembered the imprint my father put on me. And that's when I returned to him and returned to the masculinity that's needed in the home.
I found that the more you take on as a man, the more you become a man. Masculinity is so connected, so innately tied to responsibility. And so when a man takes on a woman as, going to get married, he automatically has to raise his level up. And I think to a certain extent, that's one of the reasons that men are afraid of commitment. And then that whole dynamic gets amplified even further when you become a father. suddenly there's all this extra responsibility on you. There's a life that's completely dependent on you. Your wife is looking for you to lead even more than before. And, I know a lot of guys get stressed out about the idea of being a father. Like, I'm not ready to be a father. You're never fully ready for it. You just have to rise to the occasion for it. And what I've found in my own life is that a lot of bullshit that I was carrying around with me, I had to let go when I became a father. It's not that like I didn't have time to do things that were important. I didn't have time to do things that weren't important. So I think it's a massive, massive step on a man's journey to getting to the next level. And I think it's especially the case when you have a son, just because of how you project onto that child. I was blessed to start with a daughter. Got little training wheels on there, but anyway.
Well, I got 2 twin boys, so I got socked right in the face with it. My answer is maybe a little bit different. I actually had all the same experiences, but I had something that occurred to me after 3 years after I'd had my boys, and I realized that having boys made me more merciful, which shocked me. Right, just totally shocked me. I really could not look at people, even people I profoundly disagreed and even sinfully hated. I could not look at them the way I did before because I realized they were babies at one time. There's a mother that loved them. And their life is valuable. Where honestly, I'll be honest with you, before I had kids, I thought some lives just weren't valuable. I mean, that's kind of a crappy Christian I was until I had boys. And the Marine Corps has this way of training. They say, see one, do one, teach one. Until you do all 3 of those, especially the teach one, you don't know it. You don't know it. If you really want to know something, develop your skills enough where you can teach it. And you're right. When you have to teach a boy how to be a man, that's when you really realize what it is to be a man. And it's one of the proudest moments of my life was when my sons began to repeat back to me the values I had taught them, and they were only 8 years old. It was really amazing. Well, let me ask you this. In general, the status of fathers, where are we? Where do we need to go from here, and what's stopping us, Michael?
We're not in a good place. Fathers are punchlines. I hate that it's almost cliche, but just when you see movies, when you watch sitcoms, they're always dope. So I always tell people I hate Berenstain Bears. I can't stand that.
Right.
I hate that and Curious George. I just want Curious George to die in a fire.
Right.
Like George, don't play with matches, and then the next page
he plays
is just,
with matches.
that's it, it's over. And don't be curious about dumb stuff. But what I don't like in that Berenstain Bears book is that dad's always an idiot. And mom's always like, and I won't read it. I want a book where mom does something dumb. It's like, Dad, your mom's just being anxious. Yeah. Your dad steps in. Yeah. But it's a joke. Fathers are looked at as a joke. Unless all we talk about is the failures of fathers, which is real. There are deadbeat dads. There are abusive fathers. There are fathers that lack the tenderness that you're talking about. And some of us have grown up underneath them. But where's the praising of good, benevolent fatherhood in our culture? It's not there. So we're in a bad place right now where it's all the bad manifestations of fatherhood are talked about and nothing good about fatherhood is raised up. And the best thing that you can give a child is a benevolent father in the household. Number one gift. I heard, it does not surprise me, Elliot, that you grew up the way you did. The sort of stability, maturity, that is you. It's like guys that grow up boxing from an early age. Okay, we've talked about this. If you're when you're in your single digits, and then you get to boxing like late in life, college or whatever, those guys are always going to be better. Always, because they grew up. It's in the water. It's in the system, right? I did not have a dad that was masking the way that I needed him to be. I'm always going to be behind the curve. Right. I can gain lots of ground, but I'm not going to be who I could have been. Right. When you grow up in that stability, it's a gift. It's a gift.
Sure
it's
enough.
like deep in you. And one of the best gifts we can give is a strong father in a low conflict household, right? Where dad actually knows how to lead and the woman follows, right? That's what we have to get back to.
Okay. Elliot, what are some of the obstacles to getting back to that?
Pop culture, what you've described, the books, the movies, the music, the media, the draw of boys away from the responsibility of fatherhood and the seduction of sex and effeminacy and pleasure, but then the eschewing of responsibility, but the desire for authority. And so it's all a perversion of what masculinity is. I think we need more examples in, I don't want to say the limelight, because of course that's their light, but we need more examples of fathers in our community and in our homes so that we can rest assuredly of a stable future, because men are what create order.
Right on. Now, do you have anything to add about some of these obstacles? And I know that you're really focused on helping men overcome those obstacles. Can you talk about how we can overcome them?
Yeah, well, I think one of the big reasons that men have been eschewing responsibility is because one of the prerogatives or prerequisites of responsibility is authority. So men have been deprived authority. And so many of them say, well, why do I bother with responsibility? And that's why they go down this, degenerate lifestyle. So I think that there's an element of having to restore that. But of course, it's a chicken egg scenario. If it's been taken from you, what do? I think men have to go and take it back. They have to show up. And the problem is that as we've had collapsing institutions, we've had men who were fathers and they were doing all the stuff that was right on the surface, but they had lost connection with the substrate of the actual strength of what it means to be a man. And so that's how they got weaker and weaker and weaker. So we have to get back, build up that substrate, that internal sense of authority, that internal sense of deservedness, that internal sense of leadership. And then men, from that desire to be that leader, they step into responsibility and they rebuild the hierarchy. They rebuild the structure. That's a very personal, spiritual decision. And I think that that's what we have to encourage to men, that is the way forward to get what they want. Because what you see so often is that when men have mental health problems, they go to counselors and counselors try to help them to feel better about themselves. But what makes men depressed is learned helplessness. It's not a sense that, I don't feel loved. That's women. Men feel powerless. And if you help to show men this is how you grow your personal power, they begin to step into the roles that society needs.
How do you see the obstacles and the way forward?
I would agree with a lot of what these gentlemen just shared. And so to build on it, really, I'd say amen to that. And then I think one way that we see an obstacle is that it's inescapable, that patriarchy, we've often said, is inevitable. It's also inescapable. And so men will rule. That's what patriarchy is. It means father rule. Fathers will rule, and they will rule either by their presence or their absence. And so we've created a culture with negative incentive to healthy fatherhood, with negative incentive, like Pat's talking about, where if you try to tell people to take responsibility without letting authority flow to those who take responsibility, then you ultimately end up creating a system where there's a negative feedback loop, where the more they try, more they're rejected. And men do need to push. They still need to show up and still do it and push through and create and take local ownership and start at your feet and then move outward and say, I don't care if anybody will give me the authority or not. I'm going to go and be what I'm made to be. But when that negative feedback loop creates a culture of absent fathers, when you have a culture that treats sex and marriage the way that our culture does, you create a culture of bastards, of fatherless sons and fatherless daughters as well. And so then the absence of father figures is what will dominate that culture. And in the vacuum, you'll end up with various forms of matriarchal rule and gynocentricity and different things. But ultimately what you're seeing there is the absence of fathers. So I do think that the way forward is to regain that substrate, of where is the gravitational center of fatherhood, which as a Christian pastor, I think is the fatherhood of God. It's the cosmic father rule of God the Creator as our model and image of what fatherhood is. And it's to, by grace and through faith, start there where you are in imitating and imaging that father right at your feet. Instead of waiting for the world to change and trying to change the whole world, just go and be a father where you are. Become a worthy man where you are and work your way out and see responsibility and authority flow to you as you do that.
Yeah, I would just add one obstacle we haven't discussed, and that's the laws. The laws in all the Western countries, especially all the English-speaking countries, tremendously discourage marriage and are tremendously abusive of fathers, do not recognize patriarchal authority in any way. In fact, explicitly recognize matriarchal authority over the family. And they have created very perverse economic and social incentives for men not to marry. In my case, for example, I definitely showed up. And I'm on track to spend $2 million just to raise my son as a boy and see him every other weekend. Most men aren't going to do what I'm doing, unfortunately. They give up. Once they give up, they don't ever remarry. They don't see their kids. They live lives of permanent guilt about their children. So we're going to have to somehow come to grips with how the laws have created this society and change those laws. Here's a fundamental question, and you kind of brought this up, and it's a good question. What is the difference between a patriarch and just a baby daddy, Michael?